All right. So as soon
Hold
as
on,
you're
let
ready
me
to
find it.
go, hit me with the Barry Buck Direct.
Okay. You got it yet, Kendall?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. May I proceed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the court.
My name is Barry Buck, B-U-C-K.
Where do you live?
I live in Goldfinch County.
What do you do for a living?
I'm the owner and manager of the historic club, the Love Shack.
How long have you owned the Love Shack?
I've owned the Love Shack since 2016.
Do you remember the night of March 15th, 2018?
Yes, I do. That was the night that the Dutch Masters performed and the pyrotechnics malfunctioned.
What happened as a result of the malfunction?
A kid, Jack Wilson, went back in and passed away from smoke inhalation.
Before we get into the day in question, I want to learn more about the pyrotechnics. Did you have a permit for the pyrotechnics?
Yes, I did.
When did you first get your permit and use it for the first time?
In the summer of 2017, I had my first exposure to pyrotechnics at a fundraiser and renewed it since.
When did you get your most recent permit?
In August 2017.
What did that permit entail?
I am permitted for small-scale displays.
Did you get inspected by a safety inspector?
Yes, I did. By Fred Schneider, I had a pass and everything. I wanted an exceeding pass, so I asked multiple questions regarding fire safety.
How often did the Love Shack get inspected?
About every 10 to 12 months.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Counsel, I will be referring to Exhibit 4. I'm now handing the witness Exhibit 4. Do you recognize Exhibit 4?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 4?
It is my fire inspection report from August 5th, 2017.
Is Exhibit 4 a fair and accurate copy of the fire inspector's report?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense offers Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objections? It's admitted.
What is the grading system used in the inspector's report?
It is high pass, pass, low pass, and fail.
What specifically did you have a pass in?
I had a pass in my floor layout, sprinkler system, ventilation system, kitchen ventilation system, evacuation plan, and many more things.
How long was this inspection valid for?
A year long, so at the time of the fire, I still had 5 months before another checkup.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness and the bench to tender the evidence?
You may.
Sure.
What precautions did you take to make sure everyone is safe?
We complete ID checks before the performance. I check with the band to make sure they're only using small-scale pyrotechnics that we are licensed for.
What did the Dutch Masters show entail?
It was supposed to be small scale with a little extra. Usually that means small scale stuff. I never thought there would be a spinner or a fire cannon.
Did you take any precautions?
I checked the curtains and they looked like they were in a safe space. The thing is, I ordered flame resistant ones that were on their way during the fire, so I was ready to take another safety precaution.
What else?
I had an architecture firm draw up plans for a blogger entrance to improve traffic flow. Also, my staff has to go through emergency preparedness training every 6 months.
Let's get back to the day in question. Did your staff take the precautions?
My staff is well trained to check bags, IDs, and keep a head count. We only sell enough tickets for the 300 occupancy limit. If there's anyone else there, they have to wait and see if there's any more available space. I know the counter said 375, but that was most likely because they were taking a head count as people came in and people replaced them.
Were you at the club at the time of the incident?
No, but the second I heard about the fire, I rushed to the club.
What happened once you got there?
I spoke with police and fire inspectors once I got to the scene. I also saw Ricky Wilson there.
How did you know Ricky Wilson?
She was a former employer of mine. I had no idea the deceased was her son at the time of the incident.
What was your relationship with Ricky Wilson like?
We have always butted heads, and when I bought it, I was the one who gave her the walking papers.
What happened after seeing Ricky Wilson?
I don't remember what I told her. I think it was a traumatic experience for everyone.
How do you feel about the fire?
I feel so bad for the family. I can't begin to describe how bad I feel. I believe it was a freak accident.
Did you intend in any way for that fire to happen?
No, I would never even think of it. That club was my pride and joy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right. So that's a good first draft. I want to talk to you a little bit about it. And part of what I'm talking about has to do with the theory for the defense case, okay? So is there one of you who does the closing for the defense? Okay, Riley, so you're going to want to pay special attention to this. So the claim that is made against the defendant by the plaintiff is negligence, right? Okay, so intention doesn't have anything to do with it, right? They aren't making the claim that you intended to hurt somebody. They're making the claim that you were negligent, that you were careless, and that's what resulted in this kid dying. Now, I think if you look at the kind of the basics of your argument, you are saying as the defense, we're not negligent because we acted reasonably under the circumstances. Okay, so I think the story that you want to tell in this direct examination is really the story of the reasonable steps that you took to keep people safe that day in chronological order. In other words, what's the first reasonable step you took? What's the next reasonable step you took? What's the next reasonable step you took? So in looking at what you say, it looks to me like the first reasonable step you take is once you buy the club, you start having the county building and fire inspectors come in, right? So that's reasonable. You know, that you have reasonable, you have these inspectors come in. And then the second thing you do that's reasonable is you train your staff. You train them, you give them classes and you go over protocols and procedures and in particular, you train them about the 300-person occupancy limit, and you set up training to protect against underage drinking, and all those things are in place, right? Then, so those are steps you take well before this ever happens. But then, just not too long before this happens, you have Fran Banning come into your club, right? And Fran Banning does an inspection, and that inspection becomes Exhibit 4. Okay. Now, Exhibit 4 is probably the most important exhibit on the defense case. And you're probably going to be introducing that when you cross-examine Fran Banning, right? So it's already going to be in evidence. You can go straight to the enlargement of Exhibit 4. And Exhibit 4 has a date on it, and it tells you that it's, everything is safe. and it discusses the use of indoor pyrotechnics. And you talk to Fran about it, and Fran approves you right there for the use of pyrotechnics, right? And in fact, you had personally witnessed people use pyrotechnics in your club before, and everything was fine, right? It was completely safe, and it was really cool. So of course you had no problems doing it. And then you take the next step of, after you book the Dutch Masters, you call them up and talk to them specifically about the use of pyrotechnics, right? And you confirm with them that they're using, small scale effects, which is exactly what your, the permit says you can use. And when Rembrandt tells you that, oh, it's that and a little extra, this witness specifically warns Rembrandt, hey, we're only approved for small scale pyrotechnics. And then, you should ask, right there, it's like, did Rembrandt ever inform you that they intended to use a spinner or a large fire cannon? No, I never would have permitted it. Then you get to the day of the show. Okay. And so you're there when they set up, but you don't see what the fireworks are. You look, and it looks like all the stage curtains are appropriately in place. You only allow 300 people to be, tickets to be sold, and you put your assistant manager in charge. And so here in a nutshell is your defense for this witness. I had a well-trained staff. I had safety systems in place, and I had a club that was inspected and up to code. So that's why you felt comfortable knowing that you had done everything legally necessary to make this place safe. So that's the story I want you to tell, is a story of in chronological order, the steps that you took to make your club safe. And that's how it should conclude. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and so you're close, but I wanna just highlight a couple of things that you said in this direct that I wanna make sure you don't say again, okay? First of all, I don't think you want to argue that the pyrotechnics, I don't think you want this witness to say that the pyrotechnics malfunction, because I don't think that's what your expert says. Your expert doesn't say that the pyrotechnics malfunction. Your expert says that they functioned appropriately, but the problem is that the curtain was in the wrong spot, right? And then next, you say, you bring up this, hey, I ordered flame resistant ones and they were on their way, so I was ready to take another safety precaution. Well, that doesn't really help you, so I wouldn't bring that up, okay? And then you say, you go into this whole big thing about how all this stuff about Ricky Wilson, and Ricky Wilson is butted heads with, and I don't think that really helps you to talk about that. And then you say this was a freak accident, okay? I don't think that's your theory, okay? Because you as the defendant are not just arguing that you took reasonable steps. You're arguing that if anybody was negligent, it was the kid that died.
It was Jack.
You understand what I mean? So it's not a freak accident. Unfortunately, the kid made some bad choices, and that's what caused this to happen. And then lastly, you say that, oh, I never intended for this to happen. That's not relevant. I mean, like I said, you want to end this direct by, sort of summarizing all the steps that you took to make this place safe. And that's the story that you need to tell in this direct. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
All right, Sam, do you have anything else?
No, that pretty much covered it. I thought it was a really good first draft, though.
Yep, it was a good first draft. Yep. Okay, so next up we have Rembrandt. Who's doing the Rembrandt direct for us?
I haven't.
Okay, who's going to be your Rembrandt?
I shared the doc with you, Riley.
Okay. Shoot.
All right, go ahead, hit us with it.
One sec.
Okay.
Can't find it yet. What's the direct under?
It's just titled Director of Rembrandt, second draft.
Not. Can you reshare it?
Yeah.
Can't
Okay,
find
I reshared it.
it. Okay. There we go. Got it.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. May I proceed?
Yes.
Please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the court.
My name is Rembrandt. Brandt.
What do you do for a living?
I'm the founder and lead singer of the band, the Dutch Masters.
Who are the Dutch Masters?
The Dutch Masters are an indie alt trash metal punk band. We were the lead act of the Night of the Fire at the Love Shack.
Do you remember the night of March 15th, 2018?
Yes, I do. That was the night I was playing with my band at the Love Shack when a fire started and killed a young man named Jack Wilson. What a horrible, horrible night for everyone.
Before we get into the night of the fire, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
I grew up right outside of Mason City.
Where did you go to school?
I attended Tabard University and graduated in 2011 with a degree in art, history, and literature.
What did you do after college?
Myself and a few other people got a group together and started a band. We then signed a contract in Des Moines, Iowa, and played all over Iowa. And we sometimes even played across the country.
What contract did you sign?
We signed a contract to play at the Love Shack. As soon as we got the offer, we immediately jumped on it and made the deal.
Let's turn to the day of March 15th, 2018. When were you scheduled to perform at the Love Shack?
We were scheduled to perform on March 15th, 2018.
Was this show going to include pyrotechnics?
Yes, we negotiated the pyrotechnics needs in the contract. We had been doing the same kind of show for over a year, so it was pretty standard.
When did you arrive in Des Moines?
We arrived in Des Moines early on March 15th after a show at the Deadbeat Club in Minneapolis the night before. We didn't get to the Love Shack until the afternoon.
Did you have any first impressions of the Love Shack?
Oh yeah, talk about a place with history. It was a funky little shack with a rusted roof and it just oozed ambience.
Did you have a final run-through before the actual performance?
No, actually. When we arrived, most of our equipment and pyrotechnics were already set up and ready to go.
Did you meet with Barry Buck before your performance?
Yes, I had a quick conversation with Barry at around 3 p.m.
Let's turn to your performance. When you took the stage, how was the show leading up to the start of the fire?
It was so crazy. Everyone was jumping, and I remember 5 or 6 kids were trying to climb up on stage and trying to crowd surf.
Did you recognize anyone that was trying to jump on the stage?
Yeah, I remember this one guy in a neon green Mouse Rat concert t-shirt. He kept climbing and jumping over and over. At one point, he tried to climb up the curtains and do a Tarzan jump. He actually got about halfway up the curtain before a bouncer came and took him down. I later found out that was the young man named Jack Wilson.
How did the pyrotechnics work out?
They were working really well until the encore started.
What happened during the encore?
That's when the big fireworks ignited. The crowd went really wild, and I did not notice anything unusual at first. Then there was the smell of a different kind of smoke, like something was on fire.
Did you see what was on fire?
I didn't see any flames, but I did see the right curtain was smoking pretty heavily.
When the fire started, where did you and your bandmates go?
Well, the stage started filling up with smoke pretty quickly. Even though I had my favorite guitar with me, I dropped it and hurried towards the exit.
Did you notice anything while you were exiting the Love Shack?
Yeah, I looked back and there was that guy in a neon green shirt rummaging through our band equipment. The last thing I saw was him grabbing my guitar and jumping from the stage.
Looking back on that night, how did it make you feel?
Oh, I feel so bad for the kid who died and for his family. What a tragic night.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
All right. Another good first draft. I think that I think you're on the right track. I just want to take a step back, okay? So if Barry's direct examination is telling the story of all the reasonable steps that he took to make everybody safe that night, then what is the story that Rembrandt needs to tell?
Basically like what Jack Wilson was doing like unreasonably.
Exactly. You are 100% right. This direct examination is the story of Jack Wilson's poor choices. That's everything else is fluff. Okay. So what are the poor choices that this person sees Jack Wilson make?
So Rembrandt saw him like repeatedly trying to jump on the stage and onto the curtains.
Okay.
And like during the fire, he saw him like go back in and was like rummaging through their stuff.
Yep. So here is like one of the best arguments you have for why Jack Wilson is dead is that there were at least 300 people in the club and 299 of them made it out alive. The only one who didn't make it out alive was Jack Wilson. And what makes Jack Wilson unique? Well, Jack Wilson was the only one who was dumb enough to try to go back into the club and steal a guitar. Okay, so but remember, we know what your expert says is the cause of this fire, and it's not a malfunctioning pyrotechnic. It's that the curtain was pulled into the path of the pyrotechnic. And so this witness can testify that the person who pulled the curtain in the path of the pyrotechnic was Jack Wilson. Okay, so there's really two key parts to the story. Jack Wilson pulls this witness sees Jack Wilson pull the curtain out from where it was. And this person sees Jack Wilson when everybody else is running to the door, sees Jack Wilson make the choice to run back in to steal a guitar.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so if that's the story that we want to tell, do I really need to know where this person grew up and where they attended college? Is that necessary background to understand
No.
this story? No. No, all we need to know about this person is that this person is in a rock and roll band and got hired to play this club. And because he got hired to pay this club, he showed up in the afternoon on March 15th. Okay. And then you're just telling the story. Once you do that, you're just telling the story of what this guy saw. Now, it isn't, and you want to tell it in chronological order. But here's what I'll tell you is the fly in the ointment is I don't know if you can have this person definitively ID Jack, the person who is in the green shirt as Jack Wilson. I don't think it's that simple because this witness had never met Jack Wilson before. And the defendant or the plaintiff never identified, oh, hey, that's Jack Wilson. So it's kind of a two-step process. This witness can say, this person with this very distinct green shirt does all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then somebody else has to draw the conclusion that that was Jack Wilson. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you have this witness testify, I saw Jack Wilson do this, or I saw Jack Wilson do that, I think it's number one, it may be objectionable, and number two, it may be impeachable. You with me?
Yep.
Okay. So what's important about the story is that this witness saying, hey, during this setup, I saw the curtains were tied back out of the way, so there was clearance between the curtains and the flash pots, right?
Yes.
And then it's important to have this witness say, hey, there was one person who caught my eye, and they had this neon green concert t-shirt, and he was climbing on one of the curtains. And the key is that you need to make clear the connection has to be made that the curtain that the kid in the neon green shirt was climbing on is the one that ended up catching on fire. So I think you may want to be using Exhibit 1, right? And have this person say, here on Exhibit 1, that's where I saw the kid yanking on the curtain.
Okay.
And then later, when he describes it, oh yeah, the effects go off, and I'm rocking my guitar solo, and all of a sudden I smell smoke, and then I look to see where the smoke's coming from, and it's coming from the curtain, and oh yeah, it's the exact place where the kid was climbing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so I think you may want to use Exhibit 1 so you can make that clear. And then, you smell smoke, you drop the guitar, you run for the exit. And here's where you can tell a little bit of the story that supports the person, because you knew where to run because the exit sign was working, right? And not only that, but when you looked at the crowd, you could see where the crowd was going, and they were going towards the main exit. And then you look back one last time and you see that goofy fan, that kid who's wearing the neon green sign, and he's going through your stuff. And when he saw your guitar, he takes your guitar, and then maybe you identify the guitar exhibit, and what's the last time you saw your guitar? Well, when that kid took it, and was maybe you end on pointing out the most important thing about taking the guitar, and that is nobody else was with the kid because everybody else had the sense to run to the exit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really all I need this witness to say. And so here's how I see the evolution of this direct examination. Okay, you cut it down to the absolute essential story. And then once you've got the absolute essential story, then you can go back and add the rock and roll flair that's going to allow your witness to get a good score.
Okay.
But the first step before you can ever do that is you've got to tell the story cleanly. And as long as you remember that the story that you want to tell is that this kid's the one who, you know, who put pulled the curtain in harm's way, and 299 people are, you know, made it out, and the only one who didn't make it out was the one who happened to go back in to steal your guitar.
Yeah.
And if that's what I get after hearing this direct, then you will have done everything you need to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, Sam, you got anything else for this one?
No, that sounded really good.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to Stacy Byrne. I assume, Ms. Garby, that involves you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't have it finished. Me and Casey Vogel were working on it. Because I was also doing the crosses. And we had worked on it, and then she said she was gonna finish it, but then she never finished it. So it's not really finished. But we
Okay.
have a couple questions. Like we have like 12, 13 questions.
Okay. Well, let's just talk about it in terms of the argument then, and how I would structure it. Okay, so you're right, you do the introduction, you know, who you are, what you do for a living, that this witness is familiar with the incident that occurred at the club. And the reason why you're familiar with it is because you performed an on-site investigation 2 days after the concert, right? Okay, so that's what I need to know in the introduction. Okay, then we have to go into the background. And the background that we have to tell is the background that lets this witness make the expert opinions that we want this witness to give, right?
Yeah.
So before we go into the background, before we write out the background, we have to identify what are the expert opinions that this witness needs to say. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you think the key opinions are that this witness needs to give?
That with the floor plan, that like everything was like functioning within acceptable parameters, and that the pyrotechnics were had no sign of malfunction.
I think that's pretty good. I think you got the general idea. Here's what I would say, and I'm going to be repeating some things you said. So you're on the right track, Sarah. Okay. So number one, you want this witness to give the opinion that the pyrotechnics display was set up properly, right? So you can't, that way the plaintiff can't blame, you know, that it was set up wrong, or that the defendant should have realized it was set up wrong. Number two, I think you want this witness to testify that based upon the inspection, that there wasn't a malfunction. Okay, so it was, number one, it's set up right. Number two, there was no malfunction. And if there's no malfunction, then that leads us to opinion number three, and that is the cause of the fire was that the stage curtain got pulled loose from its original position and too close to one of the pyrotechnics, and that's what caused the fire. So you're offering an expert opinion about the cause of the fire. And it was a misplaced stage curtain, right? You tracking with me, Sarah?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so once you have identified those things, because that's your investigation, that if the display was set up properly and that there wasn't a malfunction and the thing that caused the smoke was the stage curtain being moved, then all what you can do after that point is just knock down the other criticisms that the plaintiff makes. Okay, so the other criticisms that the plaintiffs make is, oh, well, the exits aren't right. And you offer an opinion that the exits function just as intended, that there wasn't any problem with either of them, right? And then they complain about the emergency lighting. And I think you draw the conclusion that the lighting system operated as intended and that the exits were all visible.
Mhm.
And then I think they criticize the sprinkler system. And I think you say, no, it worked. It did exactly what it was intended to do, and that's to keep the fire from spreading beyond the stage curtain. It never caught anything else on fire. And so that's really what you're doing in this direct is you are offering, this witness is offering conclusions about what caused the fire and what didn't cause the fire. Okay, so once you know that those are the conclusions that you want to reach, then all you have to do, you go back and say, okay, what is the background that I need to lay that allows this witness to have the expertise to do that? And the background consists of this witness's education, training, and experience, that qualifies the expert to be, witness to be an expert. And then the basic steps that the witness took in terms of the investigation. Well, I looked at this, I looked at this, I looked at this, I looked at this. And then you just jump right into the conclusions. And that's when you're doing the opinion sandwiches that we talked about, where it's like, do you have an opinion about this? Yes, I do. What is that opinion? It's this. What's your basis for that opinion? Here it is. Okay, let's move on to the next opinion. Do you have an opinion about this? Yes, I do. What's your opinion? What's the basis for it? So when you think about it, it's not a really complicated direct examination to write, is it? Because it's all based around those 5 or 6 conclusions. And so you're laying the foundation necessary for the witness to be able to make those conclusions, and you're laying the background necessary, to explain why the witness was in a position to make them. And then you're just making those conclusions. You with me? Now,
Yeah.
of all those conclusions, what is the most important one? If I remember nothing else out of this direct examination, what is the one thing I have to remember?
That maybe that like everything was functioning properly.
It's the only thing that caused the fire was the curtain being moved into the wrong place.
From the
And everything else worked the way it was supposed to.
mhm.
And if I understand that at the end of this direct examination, the direct did its job. Okay, so Riley, do you see how all of these direct examinations work together to basically write your closing for you?
Yes.
Okay, because as long as, what you're going to be doing in your closing is you are going to be making, okay, remember, we go back to Buck. Buck took reasonable steps, therefore he can't be negligent. We go to Brant. If anybody was negligent, it was the kid, because the kid, made I would argue 3 really bad choices. Choice number 1 was to get drunk. Choice number 2 was to climb on the curtains, and then choice number 3 is to go back and try to steal the guitar. And then the reason why that's important is because if you look at what the proximate cause of what happened, it's not exit lights and wrong sized pyrotechnics or sprinklers that are too weak. It's just that simple. It's a curtain that got pulled someplace where it shouldn't have, and the person who's responsible for that is the plant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So again, now I want to end on this because I think it's really important in terms of writing these directs. What you want to do is you want to write out each of these directs that just give you exactly what you need to make your argument. Okay? And once you have that, once these directs do exactly what you need to make the argument, then the good news is then when we figure out how much free time we have, then we can make them fun. Because the plaintiff's side of the case, those witnesses are dramatic and they're sad and they're crying and they're going to get really high scores because they're these crying emotional witnesses. The way that you combat that on the defense side is you have fun witnesses. You've got a hip rock and roll, club owner, and you've got a wild rock star, and that's how you're going to combat the sad crying witnesses on the other side. It's just a different route to get your 10.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sam, what did I miss?
That all sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you guys have what you need? Well, here, I'll ask you one at a time. Riley, do you have what you need to write a new draft of your direct?
Yes.
Okay. Kendall, do you have what you need to write a new draft of your direct?
Yes.
Sarah, do you understand what you need to do in your direct now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm very excited to hear what it's going to sound like next, because if you do that, if you make those changes, I think we'll be in a good place. Okay. Is there any other questions that you have about the defense side of the case, or maybe something that we talked about last week that once we got off the call, you were worried, you weren't sure what to do with? Yes, Riley?
So do you have like an outline for a closing statement? Because I've never done one before. Like an outline of like what order we should go in, because Mr. Efting said he was going to give me one, but then never did.
Okay,
Did
well,
you-
it's pretty simple, right? Because it's the jury questions. Okay, so it's introduction. It's here's the questions you have to decide. Here's why they failed to prove that we were negligent. Here's why they failed to prove that our negligence was a proximate cause of harm. Here's how we proved that the plaintiff was negligent. Here's how we proved that the plaintiff's negligence was a proximate cause of what happened. And if for any reason you disagree with us and you think everybody was negligent, here's why the plaintiff is more negligent than the defendant. Conclusion.
Okay.
That's the structure of your argument.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Sarah, you had a question.
Yeah, are we gonna like go over like crosses sometime?
Sure. Yeah. I just cover what Mr. Efting tells me to cover. And so if you know, I mean, I've got this scheduled for next week on Monday. And so you just have to tell Mr. Efting what is most helpful to you. And then he'll tell Sam and I what we need to cover. Okay, here's the other thing that you have to tell Mr. Efting. Okay, because you are doing all of these directs and any other parts you're doing on your Regis Google Docs account, that means that all I can do is look at those. Okay, I can't make any edits to them because I don't have permission to make edits to anything on your Regis. So that's the problem. That's why I can't, like, you know, he can send me stuff, but I can't, like, oh, change this word or change that word because it's on your Regis Google Docs account. So if you want anything more specific in terms of feedback, he's going to have to talk to the IT person about how to give Sam or me permission to edit a document that's created in your Regis Google Docs account.
Okay.
And I know that has happened in the past because other years students have been able to give me that permission. But when I tried to get permission, I got an error message back saying I'm not allowed to get permission because I'm not part of I don't have a Regis email address. So you're going to have to deal with that issue with Mr. Efting. Okay?
Yeah, we can
All
just
right. Go ahead.
we can just shoot Mr. Icorn an email and ask if there's a way to fix that.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. Just tell me when it's fixed. You don't have to explain to me how to do it. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about tonight? Any questions about your other directs or your other crosses? We got 10 minutes if you want to talk. Okay. Well, good work today, guys. Like Sam said, these were good first drafts, and hopefully you can make these changes pretty quickly, and then you'll be well on your way with all your directs. Okay. All right. Sam's gonna send Mr. Efting the recording for this, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thing.